begins describing the tragic accident. Jurors listen as the events are carefully reviewed. The courtroom remains focused on every word.
Can everybody hear me okay? Is the microphone working, Your Honor?
It is.
I think we all agree that we're here today because there was a tragedy. Lucy died. And it's painful. It's painful for everybody to think about it, hear about it, talk about it. And over the course of the trial, we'll have to relive those moments. And George Pino is going to have to relive those moments. He loved Lucy. He'd known Lucy since she was a little girl. He loved Lucy like a daughter, like his own daughter. The state admits this was not George's intention for this to happen. He did not intend to crash into a marker. He did not intend for anybody to be hurt. His own daughter, his own wife, his own body was on that boat. He had traveled on that boat safely through that channel many, many times. Many times. And he was celebrating his daughter's 18th birthday with some of the best friends his daughter had since childhood. These were generational friendships. George's parents' generation, George's generation, and then the next generation. George would never think to put any of these girls' lives in jeopardy. And when he was traveling at 47 miles per hour, with everybody seated on that boat, with George at the helm, a perfectly clear day, the seas were calm. A boat like that could have been powered not with just 600 horsepower engines, but 700 horsepower engines, although George didn't put the maximum horsepower engines on that boat. That boat can travel at upwards of 50 plus miles an hour, fully loaded. There was no weight restriction or personal restriction that George was violating when he had all of his passengers on the boat. There was a life preserver for each and every one of them on board, although the law doesn't require that passengers on a boat wear the life preserver. There was no speed limit in the channel. And there are channels with speed limits. When you come back to port, you might see a sign that says, no wake. Wake, W-A-K-E. Boats have to travel slowly when coming back into port sometimes. There might be a marker that says minimum wake.
Attorneys argue the crash was never intentional. Witness testimony is previewed before the jury. The emotional case continues to unfold in court.
And there are markers that have speed limits throughout the intracoastal waterway. But Cutter Bank Channel in 2022 had no posted speed limits. We are now in 2026. There are still no posted speed limits at Cutter Bank Channel. Even after this tragedy happened, our legislature has not imposed. There was none then. There is none now, because under ordinary circumstances, traveling at 47 miles per hour, which George Pino had done many times, is not a violation of the law. It is not unsafe seamanship. Still, George crashed. The state's theory, as you've heard it today, is a bit of a mishmash. On the one hand, they say to you 2 beers, trying to suggest to you this is about alcohol impairment. The state knows better than that.
Objection, argument.
The evidence will show.
What the evidence will show. Thank you.
I apologize. multiple eyewitnesses, at least 8, I expect, will testify at this trial, 8, who observed George Pino at the sandbar just after the collision, the crash, and law enforcement officers themselves who observed George Pino eye to eye, examining him purposely to determine, was George Pino impaired? Each of those witnesses who examined and observed George Pino were satisfied that George Pino was not impaired. That included the adults that were at the sandbar. It included Lucy's dad, who was at the sandbar, himself enjoying the festivities with his daughter, with the Pinos, and with the other families that were there. And the adults that were at the sandbar were also consuming some alcohol. They too operated their motor vessels after consuming some alcohol, including Lucy's dad. Lucy's dad would never have allowed his daughter to ride back with George Pino if Lucy's dad thought that George Pino was impaired.
The defense challenges claims of impairment. Multiple witnesses are expected to testify. Questions surrounding the accident remain central.
And Lucy's dad saw that George Pino had had a beer and was satisfied that George Pino was not impaired. This was not the first time George Pino had had a beer in his life. So you'll hear testimony from the adults at the sandbar, including George Pino's wife. George Pino's wife was on that boat. She would not have allowed her husband to operate a boat with her own life, her daughter's life, and the lives of the girls that Mrs. Pino had helped raise. Some of these girls grew up in the Pino home all the time, spending time together. Mrs. Pino will testify. George, her husband, was not impaired. She wouldn't have risked her own life.
Excuse me. Come side
The defendant suddenly becomes emotional in court. The reaction quickly draws attention from everyone. Proceedings are briefly interrupted by the outburst.
Your Honor, I apologize to counsel. I have no intention of trying to interrupt his opening statement, but the defendant's emotional outburst became unavoidably distracting and wholly improper for a jury to view. Okay, I know it's not counsel's fault.
I'm going to take a few minutes break. Mr. Pino, you need to get a hold of yourself and be able to manage your emotions during these proceedings. So whatever you need to do that, it's going to be necessary. Take a few minutes now, and take 10 minutes. Discuss how that can be accomplished, because we are going to proceed, and Mr. Pino is going to need to be able to control himself. 10 minutes, thank you. We go out this floor.
The judge orders a short break in proceedings. Court officials work to restore order in the room. The trial resumes after emotions are brought under control.